Welcome to our Hangout series, Innovation by Design, which is designed for innovation, design thinking, and IoT design leaders to share what is working for them, their tips, and how they can share with their peers to be more successful. Today, our Hangout topic is being smart about product design with IoT and AI. Artificial intelligence is impacting smart product design and creating new opportunities for those working in the Internet of Things space. This webinar today, or Hangout, will explore the implications and hidden potential that marrying AI and IoT can have on your product design efforts, and frankly, at what cost. Now, to hear from the experts, let me introduce the panelists. First, we have Tamara McCleary, who is an international keynote speaker and thought leader ranked top 5 robotics, top 10 augmented reality, top 25 artificial intelligence, and top 3 in IoT influencer globally. Tamara is the CEO of Thulium, a marketing agency specializing in B2B and enterprise marketing. And in 2016, Tamara was named the most influential woman in MarTech by B2B Marketing. Very impressive, Tamara, and welcome. We're very, very honored to have you here.
Thank you. I'm jazzed to be involved in this exciting conversation that we're going to have.
And next we have JP Abello, Jean-Pierre, who is Senior Director of Global Engineering R&D at Nielsen. JP drives IoT thought leadership and innovation in Nielsen's global engineering organization. He also has many other areas that he works, which is co-chair of Privacy and Security Task Force in the IoT Consortium, and sits on the IoT World and AI World Advisory Boards and the W3C Advisory Committee. And JP also serves as a judge in the CES Innovation Awards and the Emmy Awards. Very impressive also. Welcome, JP.
Pleasure to be here.
And our third panelist, as you can see, we have a very impressive panelist, and Anne-Marie's right in there too. Anne-Marie Dumas is VP of Strategic Programs at First Advantage, the largest global background company, and she has a long track record of entrepreneurship, having successfully launched many new products and services in her current role, and also previously she was at GE and Nielsen. She also sits on the board for Concentric Market and serves as the president of Squared Watermelons. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So you can see we have a very enthusiastic panel, which is great. And they're also very experienced and accomplished, and very honored, very, very appreciative to have everyone here. And I am Gretchen Hoffman. I'm Vice President of Marketing at Altitude, which is a design and innovation consulting firm. We were recently acquired by Accenture. So we're under the Accenture product group. And we focus on product innovation and design based in Boston. We have Under Armour, Nike, Colgate, DeWalt, Thermo Scientific among our clients. And today my role is really the moderator. You're here to hear from the panelists. So I'm just going to keep the dialogue rolling so you can hear all their great information. So let's jump into what you're here for. Let's jump into a few questions. JP, if I could ask you to get started and get us rolling here. And let's start sharing really what you're doing with IoT and how AI plays a role with your IoT efforts today.
Yeah, so basically Nielsen is a very large global consumer measurement company. And I have a fairly unusual role in the company is that I'm working mostly externally. I'm looking at the things that we're not doing yet as an industry, and then we could be going to basically grow the pie that Nielsen plays in. And what that means really is expanding the field of consumer measurement. What's interesting about IoT is basically the third wave of the internet, and it's the part of the internet that used to be offline before, and that's starting to come online. It's all the devices that surround us in our everyday lives that are starting to add connectivity and support internet protocols. So things like smart appliances in your home, or wearable devices, or smartwatches, all these things that used to be part of the offline world now have the ability to generate data. And that is data that could be very interesting for consumer measurement purposes. When you add that amount of devices to the internet ecosystem, it also generates an enormous amount of new data. And that's why AI becomes interesting, because AI has the ability to sort through and make sense of very, very large amounts of unstructured data, much bigger than we had before. And that's an area where I think AI can help a lot.
Excellent. Anne-Marie, do you have anything to add? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed, first of all, is that it's a very young field. The Internet of Things did not start the same way as the first two waves of the Internet, the web, and mobile. It is a very fragmented industry. It's actually an evolution of the end-to-end space, the machine-to-machine space. And as a result, there's not a lot of cohesion in the standards. There's extreme fragmentation of data being generated. And a lot of the companies that act in this field really don't work together very well and are really not thinking like internet companies. They're still thinking like consumer electronics companies. They still have the old business model of selling hardware and hoping that consumers will buy them. And that's not how the internet took off. When you go to a website, you don't have to pay a subscription. You don't have to subscribe to every email service. You don't have to pay a fee for every search you do on the web. Everything on the web is free, and that's really why the web became so pervasive and part of our everyday lives. And with the Internet of Things, we don't see that today yet. Today, it's still a very small industry. It has a lot of hype. It's been at the top of the Gartner hype cycle for the last 4 years, and it's really not fulfilling its promise yet. There's a lot of expectations. This could be the biggest industry the humanity has ever seen, but it's not really taking off. And what I would like to talk about today a little bit is how really the internet business models can help to make this industry mature from a hardware industry into an internet industry. That's it.
Excellent. Anne-Marie, could you add a little bit?
Yeah, and having worked at Nielsen, where I started my career, I think you hit it right on the head, Jean-Pierre. And we'll jump right into it. I actually was going to bring this up later in the conversation, but I think a lot of people in the industry get mesmerized by the little device that talks to you and the technology aspect of it. But what is the bloodstream in that body is the data. And I find, having worked at GE and Nielsen and done in my career, have done startups and always they involved artificial intelligence because having always worked in the data industry, that was always our first intuitive role, is that you find disparate data pieces and try to make correlations to make predictive analysis. We've been doing that for ages. Technology, the sexy part, is making it really easy now, making it so easy. And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it makes it so easy, though. I think a lot of folks rush to the capture of the data and technology without actually thinking through the cleanliness of the data, which I know is going to ring very nicely in your ears, Jean-Pierre. I think it's a lot of, the data is in my bloodstream. And so I think a lot of people underestimate the power of AI is built. Yes, it's empowered by technology, but the bloodstream is enabled by very good data. If you don't have good data, you don't have good AI. You have to have very good data. It has to be clean, which Jean-Pierre and I could spend hundreds of hours. I know I'm skipping to the end, but that is one of them must-have. Yeah. You want to get into AI, you want to get into IoT. When I worked at GE, it was one of my first things when I would consult with the various teams, is that I worked in an innovation role. I'd say, great, we're going to make the engine, talk to the pilot, we're going to make the pilot, everything will be automated, but it has to be based on really good data. And when you have disparate data sources, you need to make sure that they can harmonize and holistically talk to one another. If they don't do that, it's junk in, junk out. So anyway, I currently am at First Advantage. It's the largest background security company in the world. We are doing some very cool AI stuff, but I can't necessarily talk about all of them. So I'd rather, so have me back on the next one and I will talk about it. But Concentric Market, I sit on the board for them. I've been on their board almost about a year now. They're a partner of Nielsen. They asked me to join that board. I couldn't join fast enough. Having been in the data industry and AI business for my entire career, this company is doing what no other company has been able to do before, and that is bring AI to the marketing industry. We've had a lot of tools out there that do backward-looking analysis and forecasts to help marketers. This new model yeah, it takes in back data, but it also looks at current and future trends, micro and macro, social implications. You'll appreciate this, Tamara, to you name it, and takes all of these variables into account to predict within a 95% accuracy what your sales are going to be based on the levers that you push in and pull out. Highly optimized process. I was so excited to join there because I feel like marketing's been one of those areas, while certainly a lot of the toys and the tools and the products and the grocery aisles have a lot of AI, we have yet to create a really strong model, a forecasting model for the marketing industry that says, all this stuff out there, this is what we can help you forecast to do. So that's what I'm really excited about right now.
Well, great. It's great to hear the perspectives our panelists are coming from. And Tamara, love to get you in the conversation here. We hear a lot about, AI and IoT today, obviously. We're already hearing stories from it. But people may not really know what it is. So maybe we really should define it. And how would you define it? And can you give some examples of success?
Absolutely. I think what's interesting is that, AI, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things are these new words du jour, and they seem new, but they're not. In fact, artificial intelligence goes back into the 1950s. Alan Turing, proposed in 1950 that a machine could be taught just like a child. And, John McCarthy, the inventor of the programming language Lisp, coined the term. He actually coined the term artificial intelligence back in 1955. So it's been with us a while. It's just that, to Anne-Marie's point, it really hasn't exploded into relevancy until we've had the ability to harness data and gather insights from the data because of the limitations of the computing capacity back, prior to today's time. So AI, artificial intelligence, is really a broad field of science. And, in my perspective, it's not just computer science. AI encompasses linguistics, psychology, philosophy. It focuses on creating computers that will do tasks that require intelligence. And, we human beings like to project onto physical form. So we used to think that artificial intelligence was going to be in terms of a physical object or a physical form, such as a robot. Do you guys remember like Robbie the robot from Lost in Space?
Yeah.
Or a human-like, emotionally intuitive AI, such as was Hal from 2001, right? The movie. I mean, who forgets Hal? But however, AI in reality is not always going to be represented in an actual form. And it's present in algorithmic programming. And, just as we cannot visualize or see the form of the cloud is AI. So, when I'm talking about artificial intelligence in the future, I think of, the birth of aviation. We attempted at first to create flying machines that looked like birds because, again, we always are projecting onto a physical form. But what happened was it wasn't until we tapped into aerodynamics that we really were able to create successful flight. And by the way, we don't call today's airplanes artificial flying, right? Do we? So I think as we wrap our minds around the future of artificial intelligence, we also have to see that it's not within the constraints of a physical form or a limitation of physical form. And until we tap into that piece of the intelligence, we won't actually move into super intelligence until that time. And so now enters the exquisite connection that you mentioned between artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, IoT. And the term IoT actually encompasses everything that's connected to the internet. Think of your smart devices, your wearables, anything that's connected, and even simple sensors, right, that are capturing information and sharing it with another machine. And, we've had the Internet of Things for many years. We've had machines talking to machines for a very long time. It's just that now we're beginning, because of our computing capacity and our ability to harness not only massive amounts of data, but make sense of it. Because without being able to make sense of the data, we're just collecting it. And so this is where AI really steps in powerfully, I believe. Imagine an intelligent computer or intelligent algorithms, because when I say computer, I don't want people to always think of a physical form. So think of intelligent algorithms that are able to make sense of massive amounts of information that are coming in from your wearable, that are coming in from your thermostat or your refrigerator or your vehicle. You know, and think about artificial intelligence that can actually take the copious amount of information and make sense out of it in a way that is helpful for human beings. And this is where the design piece comes in. There's a magical marriage between AI and IoT. I think they're intimately intertwined and codependent on one another to co-create what it is that we are hoping to do for the future. And a brilliant example to finish off, because you asked me for an example, is I think of, you know, Tesla, right? Tesla certainly has created a fascinating mix of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the Internet of Things inspired design. In fact, their vehicles are built around the idea of autonomous driving, which requires an extraordinary degree of artificial intelligence and machine learning interfaced with an always-on Internet of Things connection between the vehicle and Tesla. You know, for example, Tesla cars actively learn while driving on the road. And this data is then uploaded, I say, to the mothership of Tesla. So the data is uploaded to Tesla, and then it's shared back, literally like an organism. It's shared back to every other vehicle. Every other Tesla on the road is privy to the information of all the individual Teslas picking up information and learning. So subsequent drives through a specific area are learned and shared with the entire fleet of Tesla vehicles. And if a car doesn't handle, say, a particular turn very well the first time, the next Tesla to drive on that stretch of road, that same curve, is going to have learned this and do it better. And this process is allowing Tesla to refine their autonomous driving capabilities and upgrade their entire fleet of vehicles at the same time. So, in fact, Tesla is the only automaker currently using over-the-air updates to constantly upgrade all of their vehicles. You know, everything from autopilot to autonomous parking to changes to the display and interface, even how fast, you know, your windshield wipers wipe. And it's all because from the start, Tesla focused on designing their vehicles with artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things as centerpieces. In fact, I look at Tesla as being a computer in the form of a car. So, and I actually own one, so maybe, you know, I don't work for Tesla, I'm not paid by Tesla. I'm just actually have a crush on Tesla, and so I have a Model X, and so I'm actually living into what I'm talking about. I use the autonomous driving feature, and I'm on the freeway going, you know, 65, 75 miles an hour.
Of course.
So, you know, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, right? I'm actually in the vehicle while it's doing this. And it's really exciting to see what my car is able to do from day to day. You know, on roads that it was wobbly before, it's just executing quite effectively, you know, a week later. So there's an element of surprise and delight when these updates are done right. And I know how surprised and delighted I am with my car, and it translates into so many verticals that it's exciting to see where we are now and where we're headed. And to me, that's, I'm kind of passionate about it.
Which is great. I mean, it's amazing. We all love Elon Musk too.
Yeah, don't tell my husband, but I have a passion too. But,
so it's awesome. Thank you.
What'd you say, Jean-Pierre?
Tell me why you're living in the future of your Model X.
Yeah.
But you know, there's another component of AI that's starting to make it into cars, and it's personal virtual assistants. We're going to start seeing Alexa in Volkswagens and Fords sometime this year or next year. And I think that's another part of AI that's really important. That's going to change everything, in fact, in the IoT space, because it enables a new class of devices, which are screenless devices. One of the big limiting factors to the growth of IoT, at least with consumers, is it just added more devices that had screens and buttons to push. And it just makes your life more complicated. And nobody wants their life to be more complicated than it is, than it was before. it's very easy to press a button on the wall, turn the light on and off. It's much harder to use an app on the phone and to launch the app and to find the app, tap the right button. But now if you can just talk to your house and say, turn all the lights on and turn all the lights off, now it becomes a lot easier. And I think that's an essential aspect of AI, natural language processing is really the layer of AI that's going to start to make IoT a lot more usable, a lot more, and really part of our lives. And that's why we need really for people to embrace this new wave of the internet.
I think Jean-Pierre and I need to do one on augmented reality, because that's what's exciting when you get rid of all the buttons to push and the things. I mean, you're manipulating your environment. But again, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that will come, right? Because already they have the capability today that if I think, I can change, right? I can use my brain to move an object. So that day is coming, maybe 50 years, where I don't even have to use my words to say, turn the heat up. It knows my body temperature, it knows I have the flu, turns the temperature up, puts the bathtub on, sends the chicken soup coming from the local restaurant. I mean, that's what I want. And as I say that, I do think there's a cultural, I think the technology's there. I think what we don't all talk about either is the level of what we like to use in corporate, change management, the ability for the average consumer to accept this next level of intelligence and how it's going to incorporate into our life. And what I mean by that is, yeah, there are everyday jobs that were done by people are being replaced. So from things that I never thought a computer could do are being replaced. So I think sky's the limit. I think also not much often talked about in this space is the ability culturally for us to adopt it as well. So, and mentally and change as well, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. By the way, Tamara, your comment about AR, we do have a hangout. The next one is on AR. So thank you for the plug. Yeah, AR and IoT, and it's on September 14th, just so everybody knows, listens, and you'll be able to register after this hangout. But we have actually Stanley Black & Decker. They have some incredible stories on that too, and IBM and GE are on it. So we definitely are covering that because absolutely agree with you. And it seemed like the next segue. So thank you for referencing it.
Nike's up too with that as well. You got to check that out.
Okay.
Your mind. Yeah, as far as design, and you're looking at consumer design, Nike and AR.
Okay, absolutely, we'll do that. So I think we've talked a lot in terms of some examples, which is great, and all. Let's talk specifically, and JP, maybe you can jump in here. Is how will this shift really affect product designers and their users? We've given examples, but maybe you can drill in a little more.
Yeah, I think really
verticals.
I think voice really is going to be the really big evolution here. We've gone from having keyboards to having graphical user interfaces to having touchscreens, and now we're having voice. That's enabling this whole new class of screenless devices. Instead of adding a display and more buttons to your washing machine, you can just ask your washing machine to wash your dishes on the hot cycle, for example. It's a lot easier. I hate having to figure out a user interface every time I buy a new device. But now with Alexa, I can just talk to it, and it's wonderful. It works with my thermostat, it works with my shades, it works with my lights. I have it in every room, and when I leave the house, I just say, Alexa, turn off everything. And I think this is really, it's a huge deal. It's going to change everything. I think we're starting to see wearables get rid of the screens. It has fitness trackers don't really need the screen. You just need to talk to it. And then when you sync back to your PC, then on the screen, you get all of the information about your activities. So screens are going to go away. And one of the benefits is you have better battery life. Your devices that can last a lot longer. And you only interact with them with the interface that's most natural to you, which is voice. So at least in the consumer space, which is the area I'm focused on, I think voice is really the big disruptor here.
Yeah, interesting. I know we're going to chat a little bit on the user interface, which you're referencing right now. Do you see any other changes that designers should be thinking about as they're looking at the product's user interface and interaction? I mean, definitely, the fact that we're going to speak as opposed to pressing buttons is huge.
I mean, is that for me?
Yes. If you see anything,
Yeah,
I'm just curious to see anything else or if anybody else does.
So obviously, natural language processing is only one part of the answer. The other part is you need to understand what people are saying. And even more importantly, you have to understand who's saying it. Today, we don't have biometric identification with voice. We're starting to do a really good job with natural language processing. We're starting to do an okay job, especially Google, with understanding of meaning. But we're doing a terrible job in identifying people. And once we get there, we're going to be able to have much more personalized interactions. Right now, it's just basically a way to perform actions without knowing who's behind the action. Once we understand voice, when we can give personalized answers, and even more interestingly, now we understand more about each person in the house. So we can now create a much richer profile of the type of things that they care about, and add that to the knowledge that we have about them as consumers for doing everything that's being done on the web today, like advertising, for example. So we can create much more accurate profiling of consumers, assuming they provide opt-in, and achieve a much less intrusive advertising that reflects much more, much less wasteful advertising that reflects better what people care about.
Yeah, no, great points. So we've talked a lot in terms of like the home, we've talked about, autos, but Tamara, are there other particular industries or verticals that are not already referenced that are ripe for AI and IoT disruption that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, healthcare is one that comes to mind. It's like point the dial and pick anything you want to think about in healthcare, and IoT and AI are certainly poised. I think another one is the energy grid. The energy grid is an area ripe for disruption currently. With the introduction of consumers creating their own power for their homes and then sharing with the grid or selling it back, and AI and IoT is going to be instrumental in creating an interdependent energy infrastructure, which is much more efficient and resilient to outages than the ones we have today. So I think that's a critical area. Another one I can think of is transportation. Particularly mass transportation is an area, as well as where companies can differentiate themselves through AI and the Internet of Things. For example, with airlines, I think there's so much room for personalization that can happen through harnessing the power of AI and IoT. I think there's a lot of room for the airlines to improve, quite personally. Maybe
I just want a bigger seat. That's all I want.
I live on airlines. I'm in the air probably more than I am on the ground, and so I think there's just, I would be itching to work with airlines to help them to really move the needle on, the user experience and personalization, because there's so many opportunities. Think about it. You are captive in flight. Can you imagine the convergence of AI and the Internet of Things with being able to learn about your customers? It blows my mind that it's not being done already, but I think that's right. And then if you look at the consumer electronics space, right? Take TVs, for instance. Many of the TVs sold today are smart TVs with the ability to receive over-the-air updates. Consumers can add new applications and features to their television. Before you either had to buy a new TV or swap out your cable or satellite box, but going forward, we're going to see televisions with all the features of current gaming platforms. Just download the gamer application directly to your television. You're not going to need a separate interface. And this is currently occurring now in Samsung smart TVs. Again, I don't work with Samsung, so it's not a paid ad. I'm just tossing it out there. And, various devices we can plug in, such as Amazon Fire TV, Roku, more, toss them all out there. They're there. And eventually this capability is all going to be built in. On the content side, you're going to see how Netflix monitors what people like and not only delivers content to them based on preference, but actually learns how to create new content better that is more interesting to the individual consumer. And soon we're going to see choose your own adventure programs where the program you and I watch are going to be totally different based on the choices that you and I make on how we'd like to see the program advance. I mean, how many times have you even read a novel and you're like, I hate that ending. I wanted a different ending. Like, I don't like the storybook ending. I love the Greek tragedy ending where everything turns out horrible. You know, I love those dystopian universe things. And, you know, when you have the storybook, you know, blockbuster ending, I'm always so disappointed because I'm like, no, that is so not real. So now we're going to have our ability to change programming individually. And so you and I are going to watch something and have a totally and completely different experience.
There'll be no more water cooler talk. We'll all be talking about different. But I want to go back to Tamara's point. You brought it up, healthcare. And, you know, there have been a lot of efforts for, 7+ years now, where artificial intelligence has been trying to make inroads, and it's doing okay, but it has not produced the results that everyone expected it to produce. I haven't studied it well. I probably know as much as anyone. I have a gut feeling it has something to do with the data piece of it. But I too am very surprised that we have not, because there's been some very specific big headline companies out there that are trying to go after healthcare, and it's been 7 years or so. We still haven't. I'm hoping we're right at the beginning of that hockey stick curve, because that was where, you know, 5-7 years ago, where everyone thought the cures for cancer, the cures for some of our most horrendous diseases could be coming from. And so I just wanted to jump on your healthcare comment because I thought that was it's been surprising. Yeah. So I'm hoping it takes place.
I agree with you, Marie. I mean, and Jean-Pierre, I wanted to hear what you have to say, but I was going to jump in on what you said about data, because my background is clinically, right? So I started off in the 80s as a registered nurse, and then went into molecular physiology in grad school and was doing cancer research. And when I look at what I think, just from the outside looking in, what the problems are governance issues. There's, you know, there's safety and security issues. There's issues with facilities not wanting to share. You know, you got to, if you want to do this correctly, if you want to cure cancer using artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, collecting data off of patient devices, you absolutely are going to have a global data bank, a source that's anonymized, right?
Clean,
so you don't know what the individuals are, they're anonymized, but we're going to have to share and play nice and not want to be the only one with the exclusive rights to the information in order for us to do this correctly. So I think it's riddled with a lot of political issues, and that's the reason why. Not that the technology isn't necessarily there, but I think we just don't have access to the data, like you said. And Jean-Pierre, off to you, buddy.
So I agree. I think there's a lot of privacy issues, especially here, and many of them are with regulations, but also there's a lot of consumer trust here, issues that come into play. We've seen a lot of data breaches in this last few years. Now they're starting to expand the IoT space. There was the Mirai botnet data breach last October last year. And I think we're starting to see more and more data breaches, and consumers are getting scared. And that's putting the brake really on this blue sky world of data sharing. Of course, there's some technical limitations for data sharing, and that's a major issue with data standards, but there's also the willingness to share data once we have overcome these technical problems. I think part of the problem here is that the data ends up in the cloud. And I think it's a major, major issue of IoT in general. Having the cloud be part of the IoT ecosystem is actually a problem, because we're talking about connecting everyday devices to the internet in a way. I mean, they used to always work, and now if you connect them to the cloud goes down. You know, the internet does not always work. I don't want my light switches to not turn off if my cloud goes down. And I don't want, I mean, even if I agree to be measured and share my data, I don't want that data to end up in some cloud server somewhere, and it's going to be used by somebody I don't know and for purposes I don't understand. So I think we need to think more about this Internet of Things being developed at the edge, you know, inside the consumer's home, and have all the functionality be able to work locally, so devices can talk to each other directly peer-to-peer, not having to go through the cloud. So they can function if the internet goes down. And also all the data is being collected, including health data, being local and under the control of the user, having almost like the personal data locker. Not quite sure where it would reside, but I don't think it should be in the cloud. The cloud should be the place where it can be backed up, but the primary storage should be local. So if you decide to revoke access, you can. You don't lose the data.
Well, you're dealing with this, right? Yeah, I mean, EU is coming out with some major regulations. We First Advantage, we are building an on-site premise into Europe, right, an European-based center, because you have to have your information from a consumer perspective. It has to be based there. So I know Nielsen deals with this quite a bit. We're dealing with it. I think the EU is on the cutting edge of this. There is a story about, you might have heard about this doll that was banned in Germany because the government felt it was too internet connected. The doll literally was hooked up to the internet and hear and saw, and anybody could hack in and hear and see what was going on in that children's room, house, whatever, and know where that doll is. So again, it goes back to that cultural, and the technology's there, but we as a society have to monitor to what degree does the benefit outweigh, right, our privacy.
So the two main approaches being implemented today are, in Europe, is more regulation, GDPR, which is crazy. It's going to be very, very hard to enforce, and it's going to create enormous overhead of companies, including Nielsen. And the other approach, which is more the European one, is to go through super high strength encryption, which also adds costs and adds complexity. I would like to propose, in fact, that we should use AI more to solve this problem. Because if we give the consumer more control of their data, it's going to mean a lot more work for them to manage it. And that's not something that most consumers want to do. But AI can help there. You could think of your own personal data assistant, like a smart AI agent that would do all that management for you and protect your privacy and your security for you in your house, and understand you as a person, almost like a personal assistant, but who's focused on your privacy and security and your data privacy. And that could also be extended to the field of advertising. So you would act as the agent that marketers talk to when they want to show you advertising. You would talk to this AI engine that represents you as a person and decides what kind of data is okay to share with them and what kind of advertising is okay for them to show to you.
Yeah, no, excellent point. Since you talked about advertising, JP, I'd love Tamara to jump in and talk a little bit from, frankly, design and marketing perspective, right? To get back to that, I mean, this is part of the topic, right, is for design. So how can AI and IoT impact design very specifically? I mean, give some more examples, and then how should marketers be thinking about it?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. My earlier Tesla example speaks to the idea of integrating AI in the Internet of Things into devices from the get-go, right, from the start. And currently, many companies are attempting to retrofit and work backward, with AI and IoT, trying to add functionality to devices which weren't designed for them. While this can, certainly create better products with greater functionality, I believe designing your products and services from the beginning with in mind, particularly adding sensors for connectivity and integrating into an IoT opens up the idea of upgrading hardware on a regular basis. So, for instance, just to put it in practical perspective, up until now, most appliances that you and I buy, they don't change once we bring them home, right? Your dishwasher, your washing machine, your stove, you bought it, you got it, and then the complaint is a year or two from now, it's like, okay, it's almost obsolete because there's something new and better out there. But now consider the opportunity to add new features for your devices, to devices that end up learning your habits and your usage and can improve over time. Another example of a product is like the Nest thermostats are an example of incorporating and learning and doing air updates to make improvements. So when improvements are made and these updates are pushed through to the Nest thermostat, now your thermostat is better than it was yesterday. So I see that being something for most products out there. They need to have the ability to be upgraded and updated. The Nest thermostat learns your habits and adjusts itself to your preferences. And for designers, what this means is they would want to consider what features they're going to want to be able to add in the future. So we all have to put on a futurist hat. Whenever we design a product or service, it can't be for now anymore. We have to be future forward and looking at what's coming around the corner. And I believe this is what is truly going to separate the extraordinary CEOs of companies and those that are just great and got through business school and have a fabulous resume. No more is that going to be enough. We are going to be called upon, whether we're in design, whether in product design or marketing or sales or running an organization as a CEO. We are all going to be called upon to grab our human creativity, cast a knowing glance around the corner, and future forecast so that we can build into, from the very bottom of the stack, what might be coming but's not here yet, so that we will be able to upgrade products and services. And I think for marketers, this idea of continuously improving products proves that the opportunities with AI and IoT, the opportunities for companies and marketers to differentiate themselves from the competition is going to be unparalleled. I mean, I think that, you look at being able to market features that aren't even available yet. You can start marketing for the future and sell now.
Yeah, it seems like that's tied with your consumer-centric design talks that you give, right? And make sure you really know what the needs are. And, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from that viewpoint, but, I think that's really critical, right? When we're designing.
I typed in here, if anyone's looking at the chat, Jean-Pierre has a great interview that he did. You all should click on that and read it later. But it kind of alludes to something you mentioned there, Jean-Pierre. It's almost looking at products now through the lens of software as a service model, that SaaS model.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. So I totally agree with you on the software updates. I think, unfortunately, the industry is not ready for that because it's an industry that sells hardware. Once we sold the hardware, anything we do after that to improve the software will reduce either our hardware sales or increase cost on the product that they've already sold. So we need to change the way of thinking from selling hardware to thinking more like internet companies that sell services. So if we switch to a service model, like instead of selling you let's say a fridge, take a big ticket appliance. Instead of selling you a high-end fridge for $2,000-$3,000 that will last you 10 years, we could sell you a fridge cooling as a service. So you get your fridge delivered to your house, you pay a small monthly fee, and they take care of everything, even changing the filters. And if it breaks, they take care of fixing it. If there's a new version that they think you should have, they will come and replace it for you. And you just get the service, just like you get home security as a service or email as a service. Now, the good thing about smart fridges is that they will know everything that's inside the fridge. They have a ton of data about you. That's very valuable. Just like email accounts have a lot of knowledge about the things you do. That's not data about you. And that is data that could, if you opt in, be used to improve advertising on the web and on TV today. So knowing the types of foods you consume could be very appealing to advertisers so they don't show you the wrong ads on TV or on the web. And that could be something that subsidizes the cost of that service. So we would start moving from selling hardware for a lot of money and only once every 10 years to selling you a monthly service, which now could be reducing costs, possibly even down to zero, if there's enough value in the data that the service can generate. And then you have now this Internet of Things, this third wave of Internet, which functions a lot more like the web, where everything is free, as long as you agree to share data about you and your privacy is respected in the process.
Yeah, excellent points. So we've talked a lot about services, the products. Anne-Marie, I'd love to pull you back in here. And I know you've done a lot in terms of bringing on the right skill sets in the companies. So can you talk a little bit about new capabilities or the types of people that you need to have on the team so you can implement AI-based IoT products?
I actually was going to jump in and bring this up. So I think the number one skill to have, because a lot of what Jean-Pierre and Tamara talked about is the ability to see more broadly than just what you do, right? the integration between the various hardware, software, and cultural and change management pieces is the most important piece. And the number one characteristic, and we've all read and seen it, but I believe it to be true, is the EQ, your emotional IQ, your ability to be empathetic. And not just be empathetic, but the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes as the user. I had a funny U-Haul experience. Apparently the designers of the U-Haul app, I wasn't a Tesla. My son's going to college. I had to rent a U-Haul the other day. And great app. It knew where I was. It did. This is the funny part. I had the app. We downloaded it. And the thing didn't know where I was and wouldn't let me get the truck at 6 a.m. in the morning until it knew where I was. So apparently whoever built the app it had shut down from a privacy standpoint. So it was a kind of a funny story in it. And I knew I was coming on this hangout with you, and I'm like, I'm going to bring that story up because like if the people who design it didn't literally go through, let me try and see if it works. Because like I tell you, a lot of product people and designers, you know, we're like, yep, we sat with the customer, we get it, we know how they eat, we know how to drink, we know how they take vacations, but then they actually don't go through the experience, living as if they were that person, by the way, not as your person, but being that socioeconomic, whatever background, actually living the experience. At me at 6 a.m., getting very frustrated, I can't get into this truck. So I know it's been talked about a lot in the industry, but I have to tell you more and more in today's society, your ability to be truly empathetic and put yourself in other people's shoes and understand both sides so that you can bring things together. Because that is the number one thing that's going to take in the Internet of Things is you have to be able to integrate. We can't have silos. You have to have all the beautiful stories these guys were talking about is only brought together by harmony and especially the healthcare example.
So I think it's a very good point. In fact, I would add to that you have to not only be more empathetic, but you have to reduce the creepiness that we're currently seeing. Having target advertising sound like a good idea at the beginning, but if I go to Amazon, if I go to any site, I see the product I just looked at on every ad. So you have to be careful not to really creep out the consumers. And that you cannot do that if you don't have.
That sounds like a new Nielsen index, Jean-Pierre, the creep index.
Actually, I'm really my own opinions here, not Nielsen's opinions. But I think a lot of the reaction that we're seeing on the web with people installing ad blockers, it's growing like crazy. It's a huge problem. It's because people are getting creeped out. I mean, they're being annoyed by the ads, but more importantly, they're getting too creepy, too invasive. And the reason they're creepy is because they're still dumb. I mean, advertisers don't know enough about you to not creep you out. That's a huge problem. That's where IoT and AI can help. Let's give the right data to advertisers so they don't creep you out. They can serve ads that are useful to you and are empathetic, just like you say.
That's a great point. Hey, I want to jump in here. We have about 10 minutes left, and we had promised the folks listening in that we'd take your questions. I see quite a few coming in. So what I'm going to move to right now is I'm going to ask each panelist just to share a couple key takeaways that they'd suggest the audience remember from this dialogue about being smart about product design with IoT and AI. And again, it can repeat what you've already said, but really for reinforcement. And then we'll go ahead and get to the questions. So again, for the folks listening in, please make sure to submit your questions or vote on the ones you want to make sure we get to. Okay, so Tamara, let's start with you.
Yeah, I absolutely, first of all, I dig everything you were sharing, Anne-Marie and Jean-Pierre, because I think my greatest takeaway from this is human, human, human. And even though we can be dazzled by the sexy allure of artificial intelligence and super intelligence, there's a difference between intelligence and consciousness. And you can meet a very highly intelligent person, which may also behave quite unconsciously. So I would say, as we look at what we can do, and as technology, with Moore's law, technology is exploding, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should. And when we look at super intelligence, we must be intimately involved, all of us, even those that are not experts. Our entire society needs to be intimately involved in co-creating what it is that we want from super intelligence. Just as a parent also nourishes and nurtures a child with values, we have to think about the values that we want to instill into artificial intelligence. It's mission critical. I cannot stress this enough, how involved we all must be, because in the end, our creation needs to reflect supporting, edifying, uplifting humanity in the most positive way, in the most loving, supported, conscious way. And we do have power, and where there is great power, there is great responsibility. So I would just say that let's all be involved, everyone, and don't think that you aren't smart enough or don't know enough to be involved, because if you're human, you're smart enough. And if you're human, you should be involved, because this is our future and our children's future we're talking about.
So I completely agree with you, and I'd like to add that I think the primary goal of IoT and AI, when combined, needs to be to make your life simpler and easier in general. If you add complexity, it's going in the wrong direction. If it's simplifying your life, it's freeing more of your time, so you can do things that are more enriching for yourself and add more value, then we should go for it. But there is also a danger, like you mentioned, or like Elon Musk mentions, that we might lose control of this AI. And the reason for that is a significant field of AI that's growing like crazy right now is deep learning, it's neural networks. And neural networks are very different from the traditional algorithmic approaches like machine learning, decision trees, or linear regression, is that you cannot audit them. You don't know what led to the conclusions that they reach. If there's a legal lawsuit, if somebody gets killed in the accident, we cannot find who to blame because you don't understand how the AI made the decision. The neural networks are so obscure that even people who design them don't fully understand how they work. They know they work well, but don't really know how. So just like we have rules and regulations to limit the damage humans can do because we don't fully understand how they think, we're going to need to apply the same type of rules to this new type of AI, which is not controllable in the same way that humans are not. So that's basically it.
Excellent points. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, what Jean-Pierre brought up earlier completely complements what Tamara was saying, is that all of us are involved, but yet the consumers or this public has not been empowered to take charge of their information. You're in charge of your house, theoretically, or your apartment or your dwelling. That your data is becoming, as we talked about earlier, the lifeblood of the new society here. And that, I think, to your points, both of you, there has to be some sort of platform created that enables that and gets people involved, but at the same time makes life better, because I do think that is the ultimate goal here.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you look at the growth too of people like Gartner's talks about, they're saying, it's going to explode from 8 to 20 billion and going from this year to 2020, for IoT. Accenture actually just did a study that showed AI will boost profitability rates 38% over the next years. And it's just amazing. You look at these huge percentages, and we all wish we could invest our money in this area, right? I mean, or do. But it's really exploding. So I absolutely thank our panelists. The information that you gave, the stories were very, very informative, help us really see how life is going to change, right? And how we live every day, right? And I invite the folks listening in to go to our website, altitudeinc.com, for more free and valuable resources, and to register for the next Hangout, which we'll talk about AR. And at that point, I want to jump to the questions. All right. So for the panelists, if you want to see them directly, you can click on the Ask a Question. And I'm going to start with the ones that have the most votes. So we have one here that says, and frankly, whoever feels that they have the answer to just jump in, but it says, what are the best resources to follow for IoT and AI marketing governance, like regulation, policies, procedures?
I can take that one. At least in the US, there's a really good group called the Future of Privacy Forum that brings together thousands of companies that are working together on these problems. That would be a good place to look at. In the consumer space, which is really a smaller vertical of IoT, the IoT Consortium is also active in this area. And I'm working with Jim Hunter on a privacy and security group that looks at all these issues also from a consumer's perspective.
Okay, excellent. Anne-Marie, you might be good for this one if I could put you on the spot. Should your innovation team be tasked with everything AI? If not, who should be?
I just got myself on mute. No, that's like a trick question. It's a trick question because done right, IoT should be and AI should be on everyone's mind within a company. Everybody. It doesn't matter if you're in HR or operations. There are capabilities today that AI is being used in HR and operations and things that aren't just about consumer related, but it's how a company actually runs. So of course, your innovation team should have this on their agenda and maybe pushing the envelope and looking at what's right beyond the starlight there. But there's so many companies out there that today people should be partnering with and looking at and really pushing themselves. I think it's very easy to miss this boat, and I think a lot of companies. I think I would strongly encourage at all divisions. If back to your point, Tamara, about a good CEO would say, I want every person in this company to have it on their agenda and force them to come up with one good idea that they're going to apply with an AI, not breaking any privacy or consumer laws, but push people. Because I think because the people who work in these companies are consumers too, right? And so I think back to your point, Jump, here earlier, that there is this hesitancy, like, am I lose my job? Is it I think a good CEO will push everyone to do that, not just the innovation team. I think it's the innovations team to look beyond the horizon at what's to come, but it's up to everyone to start baking this into the way they do.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to keep rolling with the questions because we'll probably go for about 3 more minutes for the folks listening in to try to get to about 3 more questions if we could. If there's any you're dying to make sure we answer, be sure you vote. Okay, so Carolyn submitted here. We are talking about designing for systems of systems that can learn. What insight can you provide in making the leap to leading teams to look at this bigger picture when some are still stuck in looking at the experience as the widgets on the page or the age-old change the color of the button, make the button bigger?
Where do you begin? Where do you begin on that one? I think the question was, how do you get people to really push beyond their boundaries? And I think a step one is empathy. That's just the first step. But I think, again, back to Tamara's point that she brought up about our first inclination about an airplane was it looked like a bird. And what that question really is about is throw it all out the window and let's have and there's some cool little brainstorming exercises that you can bring to the party and get people to think the opposite. One of the, one that we would use on our innovation team is tell me all the reasons why it will fail, right? And so you kind of do the opposite kind of brainstorming thing so that you can back into a solution. So there's different ways to come at that. I think the heart of that question was, how do we get people to just come at it with a clearly blank slate? I'll make one side note about that though. While I think that is great, I think that any good marketer or a product person knows that there is a fine degree in which consumers will accept newness before they think it's too new and they won't accept it. So you have to be very careful. There's been plenty of books written about this, that you have to be careful how new is new, because then you can't cross the chasm either and get people on board. So it has to have some look and feel of some familiarity.
All right, I'm going to jump to one other question and then we'll call it a wrap. So the panel this is from Annie, the panelists commented on how important it is to have good data to create value from an IoT product. They also referenced how products like Tesla are great because they were designed to be data-driven IoT products from the start. But what are your thoughts in trying to retrofit a product that already exists and wasn't designed initially with a data structure meant for IoT? Is it likely that you can still get enough value considering the effort to fix the data and the communication architecture?
So if the device is if the device is software editable, it's possible. Unfortunately, most of them that were deployed already were not software editable. So these won't turn into bricks. They'll be dead weight. There's also no incentive for manufacturers to update devices they've already sold, which is a big problem. And then there's the additional fact that we don't even have today data structures, data standards that can be deployed. So we're so many steps away from that. I don't see it happening on current hardware being deployed. I think first we have to fix the data standards. We have to get people to agree on how to share data, and then devices that support that will be deployed in the field. And this is why this industry is kind of being deployed in the reverse order as the web. You know, the web started with HTML5, HTTP. We have very clear standards at the beginning, and it had a common platform to grow the entire ecosystem on top of. And when we look at the Internet of Things, it's the opposite. We don't have a common platform. We don't have data standards. It's a mess. It's something that needs to be cleaned up at some point if we really want to build a platform. And we're so far from that.
Yeah, no, great points. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I really want to thank our panelists for excellent dialogue. I hope the folks listening in got a lot out of this. And I thank everyone for taking the time. Have a great day.
Thank you.